It gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend, Melodie Kleiman, this afternoon. Melodie is a graduate of the Stanford Law School and has spent many years in private and public legal practice. She is a very gifted natural psychic whose skill has been further honed by studying remote viewing with Angela Thompson-Smith, among others. Excuse me. She has other interests, other creative interests as well, such as in screenwriting and in photography. She's quite accomplished in the latter art form in particular. And what's particularly interesting about Melodie is that a number of years ago she was diagnosed with a degenerative neuromuscular disease. And her path to healing, her path to health, has enabled her to get in touch with a lot of healing potential, healing modalities, which I hopefully she'll be sharing with us this afternoon. Please welcome Melodie Kleiman.
Thank you. I'd like to share right up front that this is my first experience with PowerPoint, so I hope that you'll be patient and I hope that it will work. The official talk title today is Remote Viewing as Part of Healing by Utilizing the Whole Human Consciousness. And as I was working on this, I decided that another title was actually more appropriate. I'll get down here where that will happen. And that is this: shift happens. That really is what happened in my life, and I'd like to share with you some of the things that I experienced and that I learned along the way, because when the shift does happen, all of your other abilities, whether it's remote viewing, intuitive skills, healing skills, what have you, open up. First of all, this talk is not politically correct. I give my apologies to those of you who are scientists. I'm not one. Those of you who are academics, I'm not one of those either. I'm not the director of any double-blind studies. And if you have strongly held and rigidly defined religious beliefs, I don't fall into that category either. This really is my personal story. I learned a lot on this journey, and I would like to share it with you, and I hope that it helps you. I'm going to give you an overview of my background, my illness, what I did to turn it around, the effects of remote viewing on that process, and equally important, the benefits to remote viewing from the process. It is a two-way street. As a lawyer, I'm going to give you my official disclaimer up front, and that is this: Western medicine is great. Find a good doctor and follow the instructions that are given. I, for one, did utilize Western medicine to a great extent, and I would never tell anybody not to do that. But in addition, other things are certainly very, very beneficial. 10 years ago, I was told that my lifespan might be 3 years. Fortunately, that turned out to not be correct, but largely because of what I did as opposed to the illness itself. At the time, I frequently had to use a walker. There were times when I was in a wheelchair, and there were times when I just couldn't move at all. I've had 750 hospital treatments, 23 surgeries, 15 stays in the ICU, and 2 near-death experiences. Prior to the illness, I led a regular life. I had a career, family, I was married. I was intuitive, but it was sporadic and certainly uncontrolled. I was not particularly religious, and I had no experience or knowledge at all regarding alternative methodologies to heal. I was married to a doctor, and that was the limit of what I thought healing was all about. However, my job was very stressful. My family life was even more stressful. I was the mother of 3 teenage girls, if you can imagine. And then an extremely stressful event occurred in my life, and everything in my life turned into chaos, and I became very ill. Stress kills, literally. It is the worst thing that you can possibly have in your life. A healthy immune system is in a state of equilibrium or balance. An unhealthy immune system is one that is out of balance. Stress creates a loss of balance in the immune system. And when the immune system is out of balance, it does not work. when I first became ill, a lot of my friends brought me books to read on how to heal. And I went out and bought a lot of books on near-death experiences to figure out what to do in case the other books didn't work. But one of the books I found to be very helpful, especially in the beginning, was one by Bernie Siegel, who's an oncology surgeon, and the book is entitled Peace, Love, and Healing. And he said, we study the wrong people. We study who got sick, and we should be studying who got well for no reason we can figure out. So he set out to figure out if there were any common denominators among his cancer patients. And his discovery was that within the 12 months preceding onset of the disease, each one of these people had experienced a significant stressful event. And stressful events in these studies, his were probably greater, but in typical stress-related studies, there are 5 common stressful events that are included on the list. Getting married, getting a divorce, losing your job, moving, or somebody in your immediate family dies. And so they looked at these folks to see what happened to their health after they experienced it. In my travels, I ran across a doctor named George Solomon, who was a psychiatrist, and he had spent 30 years researching emotions and the immune system. And part of his work is cited in Healing in the Mind by Bill Moyers, and I'll talk some more about Dr. Solomon in a few minutes. But I went to visit him at one point. He had 17,000 studies in his home library cataloged by disease type. And every one of them, it was stress, 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 stress. And one of the studies, he'd done about 120 of them himself, and one of them was on rheumatoid arthritis. And they went to a blood bank where they just picked up 30 random people with blood samples, and they interviewed them first to see if they had experienced a significant stressful event of the defined 5 types within the preceding 12 months. Then they looked at the blood samples to see who had a genetic marker for rheumatoid arthritis, and then they looked to see who actually got it. 100% of the time, it was people who had experienced a significant stressful event in the preceding 12 months. But he's told me that medical studies never say 100% of the time this happens, so instead they said something more wishy-washy like, predominantly, this was what we found. But in reality, it was everybody. When you undergo stress, your body reacts to it by creating stress hormones, predominantly cortisol and adrenaline. Our bodies believe we are still being chased through the jungle by the lion, and it anticipates that we're going to be wounded on the journey. So it starts to make a lot of killer T cells. The killer T cells make a toxin that sits in the plasma, and its job is to kill off bacteria and viruses on the way through. When the stress is over, the immune system is supposed to return to a state of balance. Mine did not. Mine was still making killer T cells, and because they didn't have any bacteria or viruses to kill, they started to eat my nerves and muscles, and ultimately I came to a point where I could not move. The disease I have is called CIDP, which is kind of a generic term that doesn't mean anything. It's chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It's like Lou Gehrig's disease, and the end result is much the same. At the time, I went to an experimental center, research center, and I was told that plasmapheresis treatments, which is removal of the plasma from the blood, kind of a vacuum cleaner method, would slow it down, but that there was no cure. And so I went at that time 3 times a week, and virtually half of my blood volume was sucked out and was replaced with albumin. But the most it was going to do was to be a finger in the dike. So I found myself, as this gentleman is, at a crossroads wondering what to do. Clearly, there were big limits on what anyone was going to be able to do for me, so whatever had to happen through me. My options were pretty limited. There was no cure. I couldn't move, certainly couldn't work. I was going through a divorce, and my understanding from the research is about half the time the well spouse is not interested in sticking around for the end of the disease. I had 3 children in college. My expenses greatly exceeded my income. And to top it off, my employer was fighting a disability retirement. Things were not looking good. My life was a ticking clock. I had a very short time span to find a method to heal my body. 3 years is what I'd been given, so whatever I did, it had to work very quickly and it had to work very well. It seemed to me that the fundamental question that I had to answer and that everyone has to answer who's ill before healing can take place, especially if you have a life-threatening illness, is this: do you want to live? Not everybody does. And until you could commit to that question with an absolute yes, healing at best was going to be equivocal. That question does not mean what do you want to do with the rest of your time before you die. And I had a friend I was working with who had stage 4 ovarian cancer, not a good prognosis. I was talking with her about some of the things I had done and the commitment that you have to continuing to live. And she said, oh yes, I've already made that decision. I'm going to go here with my sister and there with my boyfriend, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it wasn't enough. You must make 100% commitment to life. That's the fundamental bottom line before anything else can happen. So it seemed to me after that, if you make that commitment, then the big question is, how do you get more of the life force? At birth, we have a lot of it. At death, we have none of it. And somewhere in between, it slows down. So what is it? I don't know. How can we get more of it? I didn't know that either. So I asked for guidance. And because we never know in what form guidance may appear or from where, I decided I would do everything that was suggested to me unless it sounded dangerous. Then someone suggested apricot pit enemas in Tijuana, and I decided I would not do anything that was really disgusting. If I were going to die, it was going to be dignified. Apricot pit enemas were not dignified. I had my limits, and I was setting my boundaries. That's it. Well, at least to that degree. So I also decided that if there were going to be a big shift in short order, it was important for me to set aside all previous notions of how the body worked, to set aside all religious beliefs or notions that I ever had, and to set aside all previous ideas of how the universe works and who or what is in charge. I did it by visualizing a box, putting all that stuff in it, putting the lid on the box and setting it aside. At some point, I could always return to it if I chose to, but for now, it seemed to me that it was essential to get rid of those and become the blank white slate. So that's what I became. I let go of need to control, I let go of ego, I let go of all my belief systems, and I just said, here I am. If you do not make yourself a blank white slate, you are going to be limited by belief systems of your family, your culture, your coworkers, your religion, and probably others as well that I haven't thought of. It's very important to avoid systems that say you can't, it won't, don't, or even worse, you don't deserve. You must let go of all of that. In addition to temporarily setting aside whatever your scheme of belief systems is, you must also suspend disbelief. And this is as important. We have a tendency just to not believe, to say it's not possible, it won't happen, or it won't happen to me. Maybe it'll be you, but let go of all of that and suspend disbelief. Put yourself in a mental state where everything is possible, even if you don't understand it. So now I'm going to talk about what guidance brought to me, what I did, what worked, what didn't, what the results were, and some specific recommendations to help you. Let me say right up front, it's much easier to use these techniques to stay well than it is to use them to reverse illness. Don't wait until you're sick to start thinking about this sort of thing or to start using it. Use them every day to improve your intuitive skills, your RV skills, to heal your body, and to keep the life force flowing. If you have a serious illness, you are standing in front of a dam with a crack. And the only weapon you have is to keep the dam from splitting is your own body. You'll notice here at the very bottom of the crack is a little person. That's me. You must use your body to keep the dam from splitting, and then you must reverse the flow of the water. Big job. While you are telling your body to get well, your body is telling itself to continue to be sick. So it's not just a matter of saying heal, heal, heal. You literally have to reverse the whole process. If your commitment is any less than that, it will be very difficult and perhaps even impossible to get well. So now I set out to find out how to get more of the life force. And what I discovered, and these are highlights, I really have done 10 years of talking to people, reading stuff, experiencing things, so I'm just trying to do my best to give you the conclusions to some degree. But the conclusion that I discovered and came to myself also is that your body is like a pipe and the life force runs through it. Starts at your head, at some point above it, runs through and down into the earth. And every toxic, negative, critical event and/or thought and/or statement creates a vibration that puts sludge in the life force pipe. So to get more life force and greater RV access and clarity, because it is that same pipe that allows you to go up and get to the place where the information is to RV, you have to clear the pipe. And here's a little bit about what I learned about how to do that. Here's some methods. First of all, your pipe will become clear as your life becomes clear. There are two kinds of people in this world. There are life givers and life suckers, and we all know the difference, one from the other. At times, we are one or the other, but you must be predominantly a life giver, and you must get the life suckers out of your space. There are only two places that people can be. They can be in your physical space, or they can be in your psychological space. If there is someone in your physical space who is harming you or hurting you in some way, you are 100% in control as to whether that person remains in your physical space. You can ask them to leave, or you can do it. If there is someone in your psychological space who is hurting you in any way or causing you to become ill, you are 100% in control of who is in your psychological space. So examine both of those and see what needs cleaning out and clean it out. Remove yourself from toxic people and events, whether it's your job, your family, or people who you thought were your friends and maybe turned out not to be once you got sick. Do not make toxic choices. If you're diabetic and you're eating donuts for breakfast, that's sending a real clear message that you don't care if you're healthy or not. Too much alcohol, too much drugs, or inappropriateness, sex without connection or love also sends a message that you don't really care that much about who you are or if you live. Your body is a metaphor for your life. And this was the most fundamental lesson that I learned. Your body is a metaphor for your life. If your life is sick, your body will become sick also. So here are the first 10 steps to clear the life force pipe, and also it will clear the RV signal line. Sounds a little bit like AA, but bear with me. I'll get to a point where it all comes together. The first thing is to search for the higher power in all that you see or do. Every moment of your life should be a prayer. Now, by that, I don't mean that you should spend every moment of your life praying, but that every moment should be in that prayer-like state of mind. Moments spent in negativity, criticism, sarcasm, or resentment are not prayerful moments. Number 2 is be truthful. Stand in truth, search for truth, and speak your truth. Don't let anyone prevent you from doing that. Number 3 is to exercise steadfastness. And steadfastness equals a state of no fear. If you speak an untruth, are not sincere, or act out of a need for control or pride, it will cause fear, largely fear of getting caught for the most part. Fear creates stress. Stress throws the immune system out of balance, and that will affect your health. Number 4, do not judge others. Live in a state of innocence. Accept and love others as they are. Be patient. Give up your rush. Accept and affirm the present moment. Be humble. Humility equals the acceptance of the possibility and the giving up of resistance. It is the simple act of opening, of accepting that there are more ways to wellness than what you have come to believe. Give up arrogance, ego, and the need to be right or to control. Be generous, give, appreciate, and release yourself into the full acceptance of who you are. Be non-harming. Cease to produce harm, radiate light, be gentle, open your heart, and make it fully present. Live in the heart of the healing force, which is love. Awaken love, sleep love, dance in love, play in love, breathe love, be love, and don't wait for someone else to love you first. And most importantly, for me on this list, all of these are important, but this was crucial, and that is to meditate. Clear your mind of chatter and pay attention to what you perceive while you are meditating. The answers are there. So when you search for the higher power in all that you do, are truthful, exercise steadfastness, do not judge others, are patient, humble, generous, non-harming, live in love, and meditate, your consciousness shifts to a higher plane, which is a state of no fear and a state of bliss. That's what you're aiming for. When you shift your consciousness to that higher plane, you can create synchronicity, you can manifest. Healing is a form of manifestation. And you can easily access the place where all the knowledge is, known variously as the field, the zone, the matrix, the signal line, whatever you want to call it. It's the place where you can go to find out what you need to know. And that is also, of course, remote viewing. Now, remote viewing will clear your life force pipe from the head up. But to heal, create synchronicity, and manifest, you must do other things to clear the pipe from the head down through the earth. First, the 10 steps we just went through, and secondly, set intent. And setting intent is making a choice. It's asking for something to happen. It's asking for healing. It's asking to clear your pipe. It's asking to be a better remote viewer. It's asking whatever it is you want to have happen. But if you don't ask, you don't get. You must set intent as part of the process. So here's some methods that I used, tried to use some of them, to make the shift of consciousness after those first 10 steps. First of all, listen to guidance. And I'm going to tell you some stories in a few minutes that will show you exactly what I'm talking about there. Things where you might have shrugged it off, but I didn't, because I had made a commitment to listen to whatever came to me and to do whatever was suggested and the places that they led to. Now, I did not tell anyone that I had asked for guidance. I decided I would just wait and see what happened, see who came to me, what experiences I had. The next day, a friend called who was the most unlikely person on the planet to have called with this particular suggestion. And he said that he didn't know why, but he wanted to buy me a ticket to go and see an all-day seminar with Deepak Chopra. He personally had never seen Deepak Chopra. He'd never read Deepak Chopra, didn't know much about the man, but for whatever reason, that was something he wanted me to do. So I said, okay. And I did go and hear him, and I must say in all honesty, I heard all the words, and I had no idea what the man was talking about, because none of it registered with me. I did hear intellectually what he was saying, but it didn't connect. I did hear from him, nothing is real, it is simply a perception. Everything moves. If you look at your skin or anything that isn't man-made under a microscope, there's a cell and a space and a cell and a space, and it's all moving all the time. Cells have memory that is passed on, and cells can interpret the energy in the spaces between the cells, and that is what leads to synchronicity and manifestation. At the time, I didn't know what synchronicity was, and I certainly hadn't manifested anything except a major mess that I was living through. He recommended Kriya Yoga, which is a kind of breathing yoga and singing of tones to create a vibration to make a change. You could go to a center for a whole lot of money and learn how to do it. I opted not to go to his center, but I did listen to the suggestion about the yoga, and you'll see later on that pops up again. So while I came away from his talk with no real knowledge about how to change my body, I was certainly grateful for the overview. I did read some of his books, and it helped me to form an intent of what to ask for. I went back to see him again about 6 years later, and I realized that I did know what he was talking about because in the intervening years, I had experienced everything that he had talked about. Another friend called shortly after that, who was a hypnotherapist and an NLP timeline therapist, and she offered to give me free sessions, and I accepted those, and it was a helpful start. It wasn't enough to clear it out, but it was enough to peel off a little and start the process. She also invited me to come with her to a hypnotherapy convention where I learned how to bend spoons with thought, and I did actually bend the spoons, and it was for me an amazing experience because I had no awareness that my energy might be anywhere other than inside my physical body. So I began to get a sense of being able to move my energy around and have it actually do something, and it created a sense in me of the power of what thought could do. Another person suggested Feldenkrais therapy, which is a very good form of physical therapy in which you basically fool the brain fools the body into believing that it's mobile when it really isn't. So the basic theory is if you had a bad right knee, if you went to a traditional physical therapist, the physical therapist would move the right knee around, it would hurt, and your body goes, no, 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 I'm not moving. With Feldenkrais therapy, they move your left knee, and they get everything fluid and mobile, and then you go to sleep. And in the first 90 minutes of sleep, your body wants to heal itself. It measures what's going on, and it wants to make both sides of your body operate fully and completely the same way, and it always picks the side that works best to emulate. So your brain now picks your left knee as the model, and while you're sleeping, it makes your right knee work like your left knee. And when you wake up, it actually has done it. It's absolutely amazing. I went to a weekend seminar with Brandon Bays, who's the author of a book called The Journey. She was a woman who had fibroid tumors, and they were bleeding, and she was told she had to have surgery immediately, and she had spent her life basically working on this kind of holistic healing stuff, and she said, well, if my work means anything, I should be able to get rid of this. So in the course of a month, she made the tumor go away. And The Journey is a story of that. It's also some exercises you can do. It's a very effective cleansing technique. The downside of it is you need somebody else to help you do it, and you need to do it repeatedly on a regular basis. But it is a very good place to start. She has a website, and you can get a videotape of her also. People told me affirmations were important, so I tried them. I said, I am beautiful, and a little voice in the back of my head said, no, not really. And then, I'm rich. No, not exactly. And I'm well. Are you kidding? You're not well. So they were not particularly helpful for me. Other people think they're great, and if they work for you, wonderful. What I did do was start to meditate, and I still do it twice a day. It's an excellent method to make the shift. The problem with it is that it takes a long time to get good at it. You can sit in the cave with the guru 18 hours a day for years, or you can speed up the process by going to the Monroe Institute and learn these skills high tech, and that's what I did. Brain scan studies of highly effective meditators have indicated that the optimal meditative state is when both sides of the brain are operating fully and completely at the same time. And you can learn these skills at Monroe. This is a picture from their website, and you see the brain looks the same on both sides, and there's earphones with the person listening to the various tapes. You go there and you listen to hemisync tapes with sounds coming in on both sides at increasing intensity as you listen to the tapes. And it actually builds neurons, which ultimately increases your ability to create synchronicity and to manifest. I came to the conclusion that going to Monroe is to this process as hitting the backboard is to learning how to play tennis. It was an essential first step. You can learn how to play tennis by just going out on the tennis court and trying it, but you'll never be a great tennis player that way. You have to put the work in to tell your body's muscles and neurons, et cetera, how to play the game, and this was, for me, that training. I went to the Gateway program, which is their intro program, and went on to do some of the other things I've been talking about. Meanwhile, the clock was ticking. I wasn't really getting a lot of the benefit that I still needed. So I decided that I would, in the course of a year, I would go to 4 Monroe programs. Unfortunately, 9/11 occurred during that year, so I only made it to 3. But I went to Guidelines, which is designed to have you get in touch with whoever your guides are and ask them for help and advice. Heartline, which is designed to clear out whatever traumatic junk we all have from relationships and what have yous in that emotional area. And then Lifeline is designed to teach you how to actually find people who have physically died and take them to the other side and transition. I did go to Lifeline, by the way, the week after 9/11, and we went to the World Trade Center to learn how to do that process, and it was very moving, but after that I just couldn't do another one. Guidelines was very effective. Part of that particular program is the deck healing exercises, and it's Dolphin Energy Club, I think is the name of it, healing. And we learned how to do it individually, and then there was a group exercise where everybody came together, and they decided they would send healing to me. So the group was there. We didn't have headphones on. We were all just listening to the tape. And we were watching a film of dolphins doing the things that dolphins do, jumping and looking powerful and beautiful. And the deck healing modality is that you visualize the 4 layers of your being, you know, the physical body, mental, spiritual, and energy. And the dolphin goes through each layer and cleans out whatever needs cleaning out. So we were all listening to the tape together. I knew which part of the healing was coming. I visualized myself as being the receiver. So I visualized a zipper starting at the top of my head, and I unzipped it, and I opened it up, and I sat there and I waited, and they all sent me healing, and nothing happened. And I thought, oh, I didn't do it right. Something must be wrong here. And then they were done, and the next thing I knew, at that point, what I was mostly experiencing was a deadening of the nerves in my legs. I couldn't feel anything from mid-thigh down. And suddenly, it felt like people had poured about a gallon of kerosene on my legs. And the nerves just shot out, and they burned and burned and burned all night long. And I thought about taking some Tylenol or something. No, I'm not going to do it. Just let it happen. And by morning, my legs were super sensitive. I could barely stand the clothing touching them. And that had all occurred just by sitting in a chair, listening to this tape, watching this film, but predominantly that this group had focused all of its intensity on healing me. And it was a profound change. Also, at this particular Monroe, I'm asking every day, please send me healing, please send me healing. And so when the first started up, the trainer said, I don't know why I should ask this, but does anybody here know Reiki? Well, there were 12 people, including me, and 11 hands went up, and 3 of them were master practitioners. So whenever I run across a healer, I just say, go ahead, do your stuff, I'm ready. And so they collectively did a Reiki healing on me, and I did leave my body and floated around. It was very powerful. Although I didn't really see a long-lasting effect from it, it was a very powerful experience at the time. I also, during one of these tapes, I requested guidance from my guides, whoever they are, on how to heal. And I saw 2 paintings. Please remember this, there's a pop quiz later on. The first painting they were both a Hindu man and woman, and the first one, he was floating above her, and there were flowers and pretty things all around. And the second one, it was the same couple, but they were now physically connected. They'll show up later. One of the trainers there was also a man named Joe Gallenberger who liked to gamble, and he's a PhD psychologist, and he likes going to Las Vegas and particularly playing craps. So he was very good at creating psychokinesis, and he would come and try to figure out what made a craps table hot and what made it cold. So one of the times he came, there was a hot table, and he discovered that there was a convention in town of surgeons. So he thought, oh, well, they're all pretty focused, and they concentrate a lot. And another time it was baseball pitchers. So he decided to do his own study of how to create a group energy to make the dice actually come up to desired numbers mid-air on the craps table. I went 3 times, and the first time was 1 week after the guidelines experience. So I was already pretty open and really feeling that energy. And then I went to see Joe, and he also uses Monroe tapes as part of the experience. One of the things we were supposed to do was on the second day in the afternoon, we were supposed to go and meditate and ask to be given a string of 4 numbers that would come up in a row during the craps session. And then people came back and reported. So Peter came back and he told us a string of 4 numbers. And when we actually, and he had seen a face of a gray-haired man, described the man. And when we went down to actually gamble for the first time, the man turned out to be the base man at the table, and all 4 numbers popped up. He had a brother we called Brain Man because he could remember all the strings of numbers that everybody else said. And at one point, we were gambling in the evening at the craps table, and suddenly Steve said, "The string's coming up, but it's coming up backwards. Everybody hop the 8." And we did, and the 8 came up. I had seen a string of 7s, 5 7s in a row coming up, and that can only happen when you're the shooter initially. And that's exactly what happened. When it was my turn to throw, 5 7s came up in a row. So I went 3 times to Joe's weekend. The first time, I don't know how many of you know about craps, but just to give you a real quick view. The first time when you're the shooter, throwing a 7 is a win. After you've thrown a number of 5, 6, 8, 9, or 10, you're supposed to hit that number again before throwing a 7. So 7 goes from being a good number to becoming a bad number. It's very easy to throw a 7. That's why typically people lose and the house wins. So your objective is to go as long as you possibly can without hitting the 7 a second time. The first weekend I went, I threw for 30 minutes without hitting the 7 the second time. The second weekend I threw for 45 minutes, and the third weekend I threw for an hour without hitting the 7 again. And so I will tell you now how I did that. You'll see this gentleman here holding the sun, the light, the expression, "I've seen the light." Well, that's how I did it. It actually is a light above your head. You look up, it's there. If you close your eyes and roll your eyes upward, at some point you will actually connect to it. At first, it seems really far away. To me, it seemed like 100 gajillion miles out there. I could hardly see anything, but as I worked at seeing it and bringing it into my body, it just got closer and closer and closer. I was setting my intent and asking it to come closer. To roll the dice, I held the dice in my hand. I closed my eyes to find the light. I pulled the light down into the top of my head, down my arm, and into my hand. And at some point, the dice began to tingle. And I took that as a sign that they were ready to be thrown. And so I threw them. And that was how I was able to throw for that long. It was not me deciding when to throw the dice. It was not me demanding that the dice do something. I waited for them to let me know that they were ready to do their job. And then they did it. And they did it consistently until I got tired. And as that tiredness began to come over me, I knew the 7 was just around the corner, and every time that was true. It just happened. We also discovered, though, that while we worked so hard to create this group energy, to create this healing in the dice, if you will, that any kind of negativity that happened with the group destroyed the energy. So the drunk guy with the cigar came along and was obnoxious, the energy just stopped and you could feel it. If the drink lady came over and nudged you, you felt it. And there was one fellow the first weekend who came who was really obnoxious, and people were trying to be polite, but we all had this group consciousness that we really wished he wouldn't come back. And the next day he had the flu, and we didn't see him again. Now, Peter said that he knew that negativity was really bad, but he had no idea how bad until he had gone through this experience. And it was as if we were all on this beautiful, white, pure, sandy beach, and there was one dark, negative pebble on it, and that destroyed the unity of the energy. I also, at Joe's weekend, met a couple, the Japanese healers, and Yasko and Akara. And Akara was the man. He spoke no English. Yasko spoke a little bit of English, but enough for her to tell us that they were healers. And again, I said, I'm yours. So I lay down on the bed, and he sat on the bed, yoga style, put his hands on my head, and she held my feet as a ground, and he pushed energy through my body. And there was no speaking, but I could feel it, half inch by half inch by half inch as it went through and forced whatever was in my body that was not good out. And she pulled energetically as he pushed. I would like to say right now, if you ever want to try to do this, what she did was very bad for her, because she was now sucking into her body the sick energy from my body, and she should not have done that. She's ultimately figured out that was a bad technique, and she doesn't do it like that anymore, but don't try it yourself. The result was I felt like I had been scrubbed clean by a scrub brush. I felt totally and completely clear and totally and completely neutral. I was also totally exhausted, and all I had done was lie there. I slept for 15 hours, and I was exhausted for a couple of days. I did ask them ultimately, I brought some of these people to my home so other people I knew could meet them. I brought Angela too for a weekend. I'll tell you about some of that in a minute. And I wanted to share some of the things I had learned with my friends. And so they did come, and I asked them to teach me how to do what they did. And it's basically the same process as learning how to be a soprano. If you go to Juilliard and you want to be a soprano, able to hit the really high notes, they're going to make you train by singing the really low notes. And that's because the extremes continue to benefit the other extreme. It's the same thing with reaching the light to heal. You must be grounded in order to have the consciousness go higher. You are like the tree. Being grounded is like the roots, and you're aiming for the sun to come into you. So to clean your pipe, you stretch up visually to connect to the light. You create a conscious connection to the ground, and you pull the light through your body, down through your feet, and into the earth. As the upper layers are peeled away, my energy becomes lighter, and more life force energy comes into my body. This was a drawing that they made for me of what they do. So basically, it's not going to stay. This is me or you, any of us, and the heart. This is the earth. This is the core of the earth. This is the life force pipe that's running down. These are layers between you and the light. They refer to it as a crystal space. Your objective is to clear away these layers and also to clear away whatever obstructions there are to grounding. So they say you should imagine yourself as an onion with the heart as the center of the onion. These are layers of the onion, which really should be more rounded. There are layers below. Then you connect yourself to the upper layers of light and the lower layers, and you peel away the upper and lower layers by sending energy from your heart center both up into the light and down into the earth. And if you are not grounded, you're disconnected from the earth, and you can't get more life force from above. That leaves you stuck in this area in the middle, and that's how you get disease, according to them. So to get grounded, you use your head less and you use your body more. You touch the earth, you dig in the earth, you walk on the earth, you do things to actually physically connect to it. And then once you have this whole process in mind, you anchor it with one word, and that word is harmonize. So whenever you say the word harmonize or think the word harmonize, this is the process of the light coming through, cleaning out your body, and the life force going down into the ground to be recycled. Another issue that they told me is that each of us has our own unique energy field. It's just like our fingerprints. And when we interact with others, we absorb their energy, especially people who are in helping professions. that clogs our life force pipe because it's in the way of our own energy. So you want to clear the pipe of the foreign energy by releasing the energy of others. I do this all day long, either by saying harmonize, release, but the main thing that I do is in the split second before I go to sleep, turned off the light, TV's off, head's on the pillow, just a second before you're going to slip off into the sleep state. You're not quite here and you're not quite there. I think or say harmonize, to harmonize my body, and I do this before healing, either myself or anybody else too. And then I ask, think it or say it, while I am sleeping, please heal my body. Please remove from my body all of the energy that is not mine. Please fill my body with the energy that is uniquely mine. And then please, whatever other requests I have. And sometimes it'll be a request for information as well as for something in particular. Then I visualize these thoughts being put into a helium balloon. I let go of the balloon and I immediately go to sleep. All day long, I will think or say out loud, harmonize, release, harmonize, release. Stay clear. So in a space of 2 weeks, I'd gone to Monroe Guidelines, I'd gone to Gamblin' Joe's psychokinesis class, and I had been cleaned out by the Japanese healers. And the first shift happened. I became a healer too. Now, I didn't really know what that was going to mean, or that I even was one. Yasko, the woman healer, had said to me, now you healer too. But her English was so poor, I didn't know if she meant that now she'd healed me, or now I was a healer, or who knows what she meant. So, and the Reiki people had told me, I'd never studied Reiki, but they told me you could do Reiki to yourself. So at one point, about a week later, I had an infected hangnail on my finger. No big deal, but it hurt. So I thought, well, I wonder if I can do something. So I just stuck my finger inside my hand like this, and about 20 seconds later, all the redness went away, and all the pain went away. And about a week later, I went to the manicurist, and she had just tried to move a chair and had ripped her nail off across the bed of the nail. And she said, I am in so much pain, I can't even touch you. And I said, well, let me just try this. So held my hand over her finger, and in a space of about 20 seconds, redness went away, all the pain went away. She was able to do my nails. Well, sitting there was a lady who had just had a facelift, a neck lift, and a laser job on her skin. And she looked like a pound of raw hamburger. And she could not turn her head, and she could hardly talk. And she said, I'd like to try that. So I said, okay. So I wasn't going to touch her because it looked so terrible, but I held my hands close to her, and I could feel the energy. And in a space of about 30 seconds, her skin healed completely. All the redness went away. She was able to move her head. She had no more pain. She could talk. And at first, all she knew was that she could move and she could talk. And I said, well, you may want to look in the mirror. So she went over and looked in the mirror, and the red skin was now a totally normal color. And then she looked at me like I was an alien with two heads. And I mumbled something like, everybody can do this. You just have to practice. And I saw her again about 5 months later, and I asked her, what happened in the intervening time? Did it go back to being red, or was it sore, or whatever? And she said, no, that was it. And it just healed, and that was that. Recently, I had a friend come over who has had for 3 years that ringing in the ears and vertigo, and tried everything imaginable, and I did a healing on her just by putting my hand on the one ear. And my friend is very ADD, so she's a little off balance sometimes anyway, but her eyes started going like this, and she said, that's normal, the Japanese healers did that too. I said, good. And watched as red marks started going down her neck. I'm just holding my hand there, and basically cleaned out whatever was causing that, and she did not have it anymore. I've done healings with other people in healing groups. We had one friend who had a PSA of over 9, which is very bad for prostate cancer. He had to have his prostate removed, and he had radiation and was told things don't look so good. And our group did actually online. One of the fellows is very clever, and he took the x-ray of this fellow's tumor and put it online, and every day we focused on it and sent healing to a specific spot where there was an X on his x-ray. And he, for the last 3 years now, has had a PSA of less than 1. So he's doing very well. On another person who'd had a tumor removed, and we sent healing to her to have her body recover after the surgery. She was at UCLA. She had a doctor and nurses there who'd been there for over 20 years, and they said, we don't know what you're doing here, but we've never seen anybody heal like this. So the group energy helped her as well. At this point, I'm actually able to see inside people's bodies. Unfortunately, I don't know the names of the parts, so I'm a little limited with what I can see, but I have been able to see in one case the tumor, and in another case I saw very bizarre, it looked like plumbing, and I knew the person was having some sort of pain in the belly and a lot of scar tissue, and it turned out she'd had the surgery, the bypass kind of surgery to lose weight, and it was a strange way they'd done it, and that it looked like a crimp in the garden hose, and that was what had happened. So she actually went in and had that fixed. Another friend recommended that I go and see a man by the name of Surya, who is an extraordinarily talented man, lives on Orcas Island, and he has the ability to access almost anything anywhere in the way of information or healing or what have you. He calls what he accesses the oracle, and most of the first 10 steps that I've given you have come from those communications. At one point, I went to his home, and you can just go there and ask questions, and then the oracle will tell whatever. And so one person asked, well, how do we know it isn't just you talking, and it's the oracle or whatever? And the message came back through him, you'll know that I'm present by the aroma of my perfume. And his body began to emit an aroma of roses, well, which he does now every time he's in a meditative state. I didn't know about that, so when I went to visit him, I was sitting at a place in the room where I couldn't get out. There were about 30 people there, and I started to smell this rose aroma, and I am violently allergic to roses. And I thought, I'm going to disturb this whole thing, tramping over these people to get out. I'm going to start sneezing, I'll come out of the meditation, whatever. And nothing happened. I had no response at all to this aroma, even though had it been in a perfume, I would have gone berserk. He also teaches the Kriya Yoga, and his system that he has received from the oracle is more involved and more powerful, et cetera, than most. I haven't completed studying it, I've just started doing it. And he's also a healer. In front of 30 people, there was a woman who came who had a tumor the size of a grapefruit, and you could see it on her belly. And in front of everybody, he turned it into water, and it disappeared, and the skin just hung there. And he's done that with a lot of people. He's very talented and also a very nice person. So here's the pop quiz. Remember the paintings that I saw at Guidelines when I asked for healing? Well, when I walked into Surya's home, they were on the living room wall. His wife had painted them. After all of this, the second shift occurred, and things started popping. Synchronicity started to happen with regularity, manifestation, remote viewing opened up, and I started experiencing quantum leaps. Synchronicity, of course, are the coincidences that really are not coincidences. Manifestation in IRVA, which is a form of that, is making something appear either in the form of information or just having, you need something and it comes. And quantum leaps are moving something from one location to another, and nobody knows how it got there. I started to have spontaneous remote viewing where dead people would come to me, and usually connected with somebody I knew. So there was a murder in our town of a woman named Sherry Daly. She'd been missing for about a week, and she was a friend of someone I knew. And I saw all of it and where the body was, and it was chopped up with a hatchet, and where it was located and how it had happened. I never see the actual murder, but I see right up to it and then right after it. Ultimately, her body was discovered in the ravine that I had pictured, and it had been chopped up by the hatchet, and the people that I saw last with her were her husband and his girlfriend, and they were ultimately convicted of murder. Ballet student, I was at a friend's house for dinner who owns a ballet school, and her mother, the girl's mother, had called to see if anybody knew where this girl was, and was missing, and I saw what had happened to her where the body was. I saw the face of the man who had killed her. It was a Latin-looking man, but he had light skin and really Groucho Marx-y kind of eyebrows. Ultimately turned out that it was a Cuban man. He did have the Latin look, light skin, and he had the Groucho Marx eyebrows, and the girl was discovered in the condition and place where I had seen her. And frequently something will happen where, something where there's an emotional connection because it's a famous thing or it's in the newspapers or whatever, and Chandra Levy was one of them, and I did draw an exact map of where her body was, and I didn't know what to do with that. This was before I'd taken any IRVA courses, and I really had no sense of what the proprietary rules would be of what do you do when you get this kind of information. But I did send it to law enforcement, and quite frankly, they didn't care. They said, don't call us, we'll call you. And ultimately, a year later, when her body was found, it was exactly as I had seen it. But one of the more interesting things in the middle, I'd asked people, should I tell her family? And people routinely said, no, don't do that. Don't be the one to tell them that she's dead. So I'd asked again for guidance, just, what should I do? And I was on a nonprofit board, and I went to the board meeting and sat down, and a new board member came in and sat down next to me, and he turned out to be the newly retired partner of Chandra Levy's father. And so I said, well, if I knew where she was or her condition or whatever, would the family want to know? And he said no. So I thought that was a message that I should listen to. Then I studied formally remote viewing. I did an overview course with Angela Thompson-Smith of all the various types, and also the CRV. I won't go through all of these, but I learned a lot from it, had good success with it, and have worked with her in the Nevada group on mostly financial projections, things of that sort. At one point in the midst of all this, in one summer, I went to 6 weddings in 7 weeks in 3 states. And I had not traveled in a long time, so I had all the wrong size stuff. And I decided I needed a new carry-on, but I didn't know what to get. And I saw a man coming toward me, had a little Toomey suitcase, a Toomey on it. I thought, oh, that's a perfect size, it'd be great. And then I just forgot about it. And I went home, and about a week later, opened up the LA Times. There's a big ad that says, Toomey suitcases on sale, Macy's, selected Macy's. But my Macy's wasn't one of them, so forgot about it. Went down to LA to go to the doctor, and my doctor's always late, so I decided I would eat dinner before going back. And while I'm sitting there zoning out, eating my dinner, I suddenly got this intuitive message: your Toomey suitcase is waiting for you at Macy's in Century City. Well, Century City was a good bit out of the way, but not terribly. So in my youth, I would have said, what is this? I would have ignored it, but not now. So I said, all right. So I went to Century City, and it was now 8:45 by the time I walked into Macy's. Went to the luggage section and saw a Toomey display, and there was no suitcase like the one I wanted. And I thought, well, it's not here. And I got the intuitive message, it's on the floor behind the table. So I went around, and sure enough, there was the Toomey suitcase. And so for the first time, I thought, I wonder how much this thing costs, So I looked at the tag, and it was $450. And I said, there is no way I am spending $450 on a suitcase. And I got the intuitive message, check the price. All right, so I went off and found a gal. It's now 5 minutes to 9. She checks the price, and it comes up $58. I said, I'll take it. She said, no, there's a mistake. I can't sell it to you. I said, no, you have to sell it to me because that's the price that came up. I'm calling the supervisor. All right, so she called the supervisor, who said, go ahead and give it to her. So I went out the door with my $58 Toomey suitcase. And then as I got out the door, I got the intuitive message, you're going to be traveling a lot. Okay. Now, at the same time, I was working with a friend who was looking for money for a business. And so in my split second before I went to sleep, I asked, please send me venture capitalists. But sometimes if I asked a question in the morning, the answer would show up as a song lyric, a poem, or a metaphor. And I wasn't getting it, so finally I said one night in my before I go to sleep message, please make it splashy. I don't get the song lyrics, I don't understand poetry, and I'm not any good at metaphors, so just make it splashy. Well, the next day, a friend of mine came in to town who was into all this stuff, the hypnotherapist, and we went to dinner at a place that had 2-tiered seating, and there was a couple behind me at a table above my head and back. And so I'm telling her that I've asked for splashy, and she said, oh, I understand. And next thing I know, my back starts to get wet. And I'm wearing a brand new silk shirt, so I'm really kind of hacked off about the whole thing. And I said, Mary, what's going on? I thought it was the air conditioner. She said, turn around. I turn around. She says, you've got balsamic vinegar all over your back. And the guy behind me is splashing balsamic vinegar onto his bread plate, which is bouncing off and landing on my silk shirt. So I turn around, excuse me, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll buy you a new shirt, I'll pay for the cleaning, whatever. So all right, he was very nice, gave me his card. Well, as it turned out, who would know, but the cleaners actually got the balsamic vinegar out of the shirt, so I thought, I'll call the guy who's nice and just tell him it came out. So I hadn't looked at the card, didn't have my glasses on, so I pull out the card and it says the Kaplan Group. And so I called him, I said, by the way, what do you do? Well, they were venture capitalists. And he said, it was the strangest night. He said, I know I'm supposed to pour the balsamic vinegar onto my plate, but it was like somebody took hold of my hand and forced me to splash it, and I just couldn't stop. Exactly. Be very careful how you ask for it. Probably running out of time here, so I won't tell all these stories, but one I do want to tell you because it really does involve some complexities here. I had my disability case was heard before a mediator and I lost it, and I had 10 days to come up with some new kind of evidence. I had not yet discovered anything about the immune system imbalance that I told you about earlier, and I didn't have any new evidence. So in the split second before sleep, I just thought, I don't know what else to do. I don't have any more evidence. If you want me to have this as an income, please tell me or show me what to do. I woke up at 3 a.m. with the message that I should look in a certain book. And I had a whole stack of books about how to heal, but the problem when you're sick is you don't have the energy to read the books. So one of them that I was told to look in was Bill Moyer's Healing in the Mind. And I did have it, and I picked it up, and it was a very thick book. And I thought, well, where exactly do you want me to look? And I received the intuitive message, look in the table of contents. And there was a chapter on emotions and the immune system, where a psychologist at UCLA had taken 20 method actors, tested their blood, had them get into an agitated state, tested it 20 minutes later, and they all had greatly elevated killer T cells. That was what I needed. So in the morning, I called UCLA, and I was told that the psychologist had been on leave for a year. No one knew where she could be located. So, well, does she have an assistant? Well, yeah, she works in the history department. So I called her, and she said, it's really strange. I haven't heard from her in a year, but I'm having dinner with her tonight at 6, and I can hear how important this is to you, so I will ask her to call you. So that night, she called me, and she said, I can't help you. I'm not a physician. I can't get on the stand and talk about killer T cells. But she recommended I call Dr. George Solomon, the gentleman I told you about earlier, because he had helped her in the study, and it was a psychiatrist who had spent 30 years researching this. However, he was retired. He traveled a lot. She hadn't talked to him in a year, and she was not sure if he would be home. So I took his phone number. Being polite, I waited until 10 o'clock the next morning, but by now it was Friday morning. I had to respond to the court on Tuesday, and I waited till 10 a.m. He had returned the night before from a 3-month stay in Europe. He was leaving in an hour to go to the airport to go to San Francisco for the weekend, but he agreed to see me on Monday at his home. Well, I had no other options, so I said, okay. I went there on Monday, and he was a pretty grouchy guy, actually, and I realized I needed a declaration from him, but he was really so grouchy that I had to rush, and also he was leaving the next morning to go back to Europe. So I brought my little laptop, and I started drafting it, and I brought a little portable printer, and I knew there was something I was supposed to put in it, but I just couldn't remember what it was. So I decided I'd just have him sign what I had prepared, even though it may not be enough. Well, the printer wouldn't print. He had a Mac system, I had a PC, I didn't know how to make them talk, so I said, well, I'll go home, I'll print it up, I'll fax it to you, and if it's okay, then you can sign it in the morning, I'll come back before your flight. On the way home, I remembered the paragraph that I had forgotten. I inserted it, faxed it, he signed it, I filed it with the court on Tuesday. And then I thought, well, I better get this printer fixed. So I put everything out on the table, pulled up the same document, pushed print, and it printed perfectly. 6 months later, when the judge reviewed the case, the paragraph that I had forgotten was the one that turned the case around, and ultimately that was what I had won. It's also gone on with a lot of synchronistic experiences with people showing up. You think of somebody, the phone rings, people that I wanted to see would be there, and then began to experience quantum leaps, where my friend Barbara, who's here, one day had lost her car keys, and I went over to see her. She'd been looking for about 6 hours, and I had a feeling that they were in a certain area. She had her son lift up the couch. She sweeps out from under the couch the junk that's under everybody's couch, a big dust ball, smashes it with the broom, nothing there, nothing there. We look over here, not over there, look back, and the keys are sitting on top of the dust ball. I said, Barbara, Stephen, look at this. They hadn't been there a second ago. I've done that since then with all the stuff on this list, where now people, when they lose something of significance to them, they call me up and we move it. Sometimes it's many miles. I've also found that when I've done hands-on healing on people, that they start to experience synchronicity and manifestation also. So I decided if I could make that happen, that I could use the same technique basically to alter the cells in my body. So in a split second before sleep, I told my body to return to the same condition, appearance, and function that it had on my 27th birthday. And I received the intuitive message, you will have periods. And I thought that's not exactly what I was hoping for. And then I got the message, that's how you will know that it's working. Well, I'm 58 years old. I've been through menopause many years ago, and 2 weeks after that, I had a period. And my first thought was I had a tumor, so I went to the doctor to check it out, and he said, no, everything's just fine. I told him I'd had a period, and he said, that's very strange. Now, you'll notice that I asked for the same condition, appearance, and function as on my 27th birthday, and one of the things I wanted to do was get smaller, because when I found out that I was really ill, I decided I wasn't going to spend the last 3 years of my life on a diet, so I put on 30 pounds, but then I didn't die. So I have actually lost 2 dress sizes, but I have not lost any weight after this request. So, in conclusion, any of these methods may work for you, maybe they won't. If the method works for you, it's the right method. There is no one single right way to do it. If it doesn't work for you, it isn't the right method. Move on to another one. It doesn't matter what you do so long as every day you do something to consistently send the message that you want to heal and you want to be well. Every time you take a sip of green tea, it sends a message because we have a belief system that green tea makes you healthy. I don't know if it makes you healthy, but every time you sip it, you're sending the message that it's important to you to be healthy and that you want to be healthy. The field, the zone, the matrix, the signal line, all of that, in my experience, are at the same place. You can go there to remote view, you can go there to create synchronicity, you can go there to manifest, you can go there to make quantum leaps, you can go there to heal yourself and others, because it is not just a one-way communication system, it's a two-way communication. So in summary, do you want to live? Make a commitment to life, ask for guidance, set aside your belief system, become the blank white slate, clear out your life force pipe, do everything guidance suggests to you, and if you say no to help that is offered to you, which people frequently do when they're not feeling well, you are giving the message that it isn't important to you to heal. So if someone offers to help you heal, say yes. Access the signal line daily, practice your RV to increase those accessibility skills, meditate morning and evening, and in the split second before you sleep, make your request list and be specific. Remember the guy with the balsamic vinegar. Surround yourself also with reasons to stay alive. In my house, I can't look more than 2 feet without seeing something that's a reminder to me of why it's important to keep breathing. And most important, love yourself and others. When your pipe is clear and your thoughts, words, and actions are synchronized, it will create synchronicity in your life. And when you can create synchronicity with your thoughts, you can go on to manifest, make quantum leaps, and change the cells of your body as well as heal others. I hope this helps you, and thank you very much for coming.